The bustling city in the Amazon district was thrown into chaos as swarms of insects invaded overnight. People were bewildered, streets covered in a crawling mass, disrupting daily life. Authorities scrambled for answers, seeking the expertise of leading entomologists. The sudden influx of insects was alarming, prompting an urgent investigation into the phenomenon. Scientists' expressions turned pale as they uncovered the chilling cause behind the infestation. The group of scientists looked at each other in complete disbelief. Leading researcher Dr. Santos yelled at his team to run the test again. He knew that this could not possibly be right. But the nervous team of scientists did not take action. In fact, they informed Santos that they had already rerun the test. They had run it 5 times and always came up with the same results. They looked at the bewildered Santos and told him that there was no doubt in their minds that these results were accurate, no matter how ridiculous they sounded. Santos could not believe it. He thought back to the devastation that these swarms of pests had been causing all over the city he loved, and he could not believe that something like this could be the cause. Having no other choice but to believe his team, Santos quickly called up the mayor of the town. He had a plan to get the bugs out of their city for good. But what were all the insects doing in the Amazon city? What discovery had the group of scientists made? And what plan did Dr. Santos come up with to deal with this problem? The city had been in nearly complete disarray ever since the swarm of bugs arrived yesterday. They had seemingly come out of absolutely nowhere. The city was fairly close to the dense jungles of the Amazon River, an area which was of course perfect for bugs to survive. And as a result, the city's inhabitants were used to living with bugs, but they had never experienced anything like this. The whole city was ground to a halt by the seemingly endless swarm entering the city from the rainforest. People were confused about how all these creatures together had not yet eaten all the green in the entire forest. But now they were here and in the city, and they had to do something about them quickly. The mayor wasted no time getting his best people on the job. The mayor instructed Dr. Santos, an expert in bug behavior and characteristics, to gather a team and start coming up with a solution to deal with this debilitating problem. Of course, Dr. Santos was happy to take the job. It felt like the biggest thing he had ever done in his life. The survival of an entire city depended on him, and he got to work right away gathering people for his team. Dr. Santos hired experts from all different kinds of disciplines, and within the day, he had managed to bring them all together. Being funded by the local government clearly came with a lot of benefits. Dr. Santos really wanted to know where the bugs had come from and why they were here. But the mayor had given him clear instructions to first find a way to get rid of them. He needed the city to start up again as soon as possible. And so the team started to test what known bug repellent solutions they could employ on a large scale, with the least amount of side effects. Poison was of course an easy solution, but the amount of poison they would have to use here would most definitely have very serious consequences for the rest of the local ecosystem as well. This was seen as the emergency solution. Luckily, the team also had a plan that would do a lot less damage. This would help them get most of the bugs out of the city, and then they could try and eradicate a large part of them outside the city. The team did not want to kill every single bug, as that could present other environmental issues. But there were too many of these insects at the moment. Dr. Santos and his team had identified the plague of insects as a swarm of locusts, a species of bug that reproduces very quickly, and a swarm of them had been known to terrorize farms and other cities in the past. Luckily for Dr. Santos, this was also a species that could easily be drawn to a specific scent, a scent that they would be able to replicate on a large scale. The team quickly began working on recreating the scent in large volumes, preparing barrels to attract the locusts. Dr. Santos supervised the process, ensuring the mixture was perfect. "We need more pheromones," he said, pacing the lab. His team responded swiftly, adjusting the formula. Soon, barrels filled with the potent scent lined the walls. "This should do it," Santos muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. They had to act fast. The city depended on them. They loaded the barrels onto trucks and drove around the city, spreading the scent to lure the locusts away. "Keep moving," Santos instructed over the radio. Trucks rolled through the streets, the scent wafting into the air. People peeked from windows, watching the strange procession. "It's working!" a team member exclaimed as locusts began to follow. The trucks navigated carefully, drawing the swarm towards the city's edge. Locusts followed the trucks, slowly being led out of the city towards a designated poison room. The convoy moved steadily, ensuring the insects didn't scatter. "Steady now," Santos reminded his team. The buzzing swarm trailed behind, hypnotized by the scent. "Almost there," came a voice over the radio. The trucks approached the outskirts, the designated poison room in sight. The team held their breath, hoping the plan would work. The process, though effective, moved slowly, requiring continuous monitoring and adjustment. "We need to keep the scent consistent," Santos reminded his team. They adjusted the release mechanisms, ensuring a steady flow. Hours passed as they guided the locusts, stopping only to refuel. "We're making progress," a tired voice reported. The swarm thinned out, but the team knew there was still much to do. They pressed on, determined to see the plan through. Despite the slow progress, the team remained hopeful as they saw the locusts following the trucks out of the city. "Look at them go," Santos said, a hint of a smile on his face. The trucks kept moving, the swarm obediently trailing behind. "We might just pull this off," a team member said, optimism growing. They drove on, the city slowly coming back to life in their wake. The end seemed in sight, but challenges loomed. The team faced an overwhelming number of locusts, realizing that more were arriving in the city. "There's just so many of them," a team member exclaimed, eyes wide. Dr. Santos watched the swarm grow, frustration etched on his face. "We need to rethink our approach," he said, pacing. The trucks continued their rounds, but it felt like a losing battle. The locusts kept coming, undeterred by their efforts. Dr. Santos pondered why this year was different, questioning the sudden influx of locusts. "What's changed?" he muttered, reviewing the data. "We've had locusts before, but never like this." His team offered suggestions, but nothing seemed to fit. The city had never faced such an invasion. Santos needed answers, and he needed them fast. "We're missing something," he said, determination in his voice. He recognized that it was locust season, but noted the town had never experienced such an invasion before. "This is beyond anything we've seen," Santos said, shaking his head. The usual measures weren't enough. "Something's different this year," he continued, staring at the swarming insects. His team agreed, nodding in unison. The locusts were relentless, and they needed to find out why. Dr. Santos decided they needed to identify what had changed in the past year to attract the locusts. "We need to look at every detail," he instructed his team. "What's different this time?" They began compiling data, looking for patterns. Santos hoped they could find a clue. "There has to be something," he muttered, scanning the reports. The clock was ticking, and the locusts weren't waiting. The team began brainstorming and investigating potential changes in the city from the previous year. "Think outside the box," Santos urged. "Look at construction, weather patterns, anything." They pored over records, searching for a cause. Ideas flew across the room as they debated possibilities. "Could it be new crops?" someone suggested. "Or climate change," another offered. The team worked tirelessly, hoping to find the key to stopping the swarm. Dr. Santos assigned part of his team to compile a list of changes and events from the past year. "Focus on anything that stands out," he said. The team split up, diving into records and archives. "New constructions, agricultural shifts, anything," Santos emphasized. They worked diligently, noting every potential factor. The list grew longer, but no clear cause emerged yet. "Keep digging," Santos urged, hope mingling with frustration. Another group continued working on the scent-based tactic to lure the locusts out. "Maintain the scent levels," Santos reminded. Trucks kept moving through the city, releasing the pheromone mixture. "It's helping, but we need more time," a team member reported. The locusts followed, drawn by the scent, but new ones kept arriving. "We can't let up now," Santos said, determined to keep the plan on track. Santos himself decided to explore the rainforest with a guide to find the locust's source. "We need to see where they're coming from," he said. Armed with supplies, Santos and his guide ventured into the dense jungle. "Stay alert," the guide warned. They trekked deeper, the sounds of the city fading behind them. "There must be a clue here," Santos murmured, eyes scanning the foliage. As they ventured deeper into the forest, they noticed fewer locusts, confirming their concentration around the city. "It's like they're being drawn there," Santos observed. The guide nodded. "They're definitely heading towards the city." They pressed on, hoping to find the swarm's origin. "This doesn't make sense," Santos muttered, the mystery deepening with each step. They needed answers, and soon. Despite their efforts, they could not pinpoint a specific origin of the locusts in the forest. "It's like they're appearing out of nowhere," Santos said, frustration creeping into his voice. The guide shook his head, equally baffled. "We've covered a lot of ground," he replied. Exhausted, they paused, realizing the forest held no obvious clues. "We'll have to keep looking," Santos said, refusing to give up. The search continued. The team dissected captured locusts, but found nothing unusual that could explain the swarm's behavior. "Everything looks normal," a researcher said, shaking his head. Dr. Santos peered through a microscope, frustration growing. "There must be something we're missing," he said. The locusts showed no signs of disease or genetic anomalies. "Keep looking," Santos urged, though hope was fading. The mystery deepened, and the locusts continued to swarm. They observed that all the locusts seemed to be moving towards the city from different directions. "They're converging here from everywhere," a team member noted. Maps covered the walls, marked with the locusts' paths. "It's like they're being drawn by a magnet," Santos said, eyes fixed on the maps. The pattern was clear, but the reason was not. "Why here? Why now?" he wondered aloud, the questions piling up. Dr. Santos acknowledged the strong, mysterious pull drawing the locusts to the city. "It's undeniable," he said, addressing his team. "Something is attracting them here." The team exchanged glances, their determination renewed. "We need to figure out what it is," Santos continued. They had more questions than answers, but they were closer to understanding the phenomenon. "We're on the right track," he assured them, though uncertainty lingered. Frustrated, he realized there was no clear origin of the swarm in the forest. "We've scoured every inch," Santos said, exasperated. The guide nodded in agreement. "Nothing out of the ordinary," he confirmed. They had hoped to find a clue, but the forest held its secrets tightly. "We need a new angle," Santos declared. They turned back towards the city, determination mingled with frustration. The search was far from over. The team continued their efforts, trying to understand what was attracting the locusts. "We need fresh ideas," Santos said, rallying his team. They brainstormed, bouncing theories off each other. "Could it be something environmental?" one suggested. "Or maybe a new development," another offered. They documented every idea, no matter how far-fetched. "We'll find it," Santos promised, though the path was unclear. The team's resolve was unshaken. Santos returned home disappointed, determined to find the cause of the locust invasion. "We're missing something," he muttered to himself, pacing his living room. The weight of the city's plight rested heavily on his shoulders. "I won't give up," he vowed, looking at the scattered reports on his table. The answer had to be somewhere, and he was resolved to find it no matter what. The team reconvened, but their compiled list of changes provided no direct answers. "We've looked at everything," a frustrated team member said. Santos reviewed the list again, frowning. "There has to be a clue here," he insisted. They debated potential leads, but nothing seemed to fit. "We need a breakthrough," Santos said, feeling the pressure. The locusts continued to swarm, and time was running out. They identified significant new constructions like apartments, water refineries, and food storage units. "These are all major projects," a team member noted. Santos nodded, considering each one. "Could any of these be the cause?" he asked. The team discussed the possibilities, but nothing stood out. "We need to look deeper," Santos said. The list was long, but they had to start somewhere. Each construction held potential clues. One construction project, a large church built by a millionaire, stood out. Why a church? Santos wondered aloud. The project seemed out of place and unusually lavish. "Who is this millionaire?" another team member asked. They dug into the details, finding the project oddly extravagant for the area. "This needs a closer look," Santos decided. The church didn't fit with the other constructions. It might hold the key. With no other leads, Dr. Santos and his team decided to investigate the church despite the slim chance of success. "We have to explore every option," Santos said firmly. The team agreed, gathering their gear. "Let's hope this isn't a wild goose chase," a team member remarked. The locusts were still swarming, but they couldn't ignore this potential clue. The journey to the church began, filled with cautious hope. The church, built by a millionaire in the city centre, seemed out of place and excessively expensive. "Why would anyone spend so much on this?" Santos wondered as they approached the grand structure. The lavish design stood in stark contrast to the surrounding buildings. "It doesn't fit," a team member agreed. The more they looked, the more the church seemed like an oddity, raising more questions than answers. Few locals practiced religion, making the church's construction even more peculiar. "There's hardly a congregation here," a local pointed out. The team noted the empty pews and silent halls. "Why build such a grand church in a non-religious town?" Santos asked. The question hung in the air, heavy with suspicion. "Something's definitely off," a team member muttered, eyeing the opulent decor. The church's purpose remained a mystery. Dr. Santos doubted the millionaire's claim of building it out of love for God. "It just doesn't add up," he said, shaking his head. The millionaire's motives seemed questionable. "He's not even religious," someone mentioned. Santos dug deeper, looking into the millionaire's background. "There must be another reason," he mused. The opulence of the church suggested something more than piety. "We need to find out what it is," he resolved. The team decided to visit the church, facing a difficult journey through increasing locust swarms. "Stay close and keep moving," Santos instructed. The locusts thickened as they neared the city centre. "It's like they're guarding it," a team member noted. They pushed forward, swatting away the relentless insects. "Almost there," Santos encouraged, though the journey was grueling. The church loomed ahead, shrouded in locusts and mystery. Despite the challenges, they reached the church, suspecting it might be linked to the locust plague. "We made it," Santos said, breathing heavily. The locusts swirled around the building, an ominous sign. "This place is definitely connected," a team member said. They exchanged determined glances. "Let's find out what's going on," Santos said, stepping forward. The church held the answers they needed, and they were ready to uncover the truth. As they approached the church, the number of locusts increased dramatically. "They're everywhere," a team member exclaimed, swatting at the thickening swarm. Santos squinted through the mass of insects. "It's like they're converging here," he observed. The air buzzed with the sound of countless wings. "We're close," Santos encouraged, pushing forward. The church loomed ahead, nearly obscured by the insects. "Let's keep moving," he urged, determination in his voice. The team struggled to navigate through the dense swarms, realizing the church was a focal point. "It's almost impossible to see," one of them shouted over the noise. Santos led the way, his eyes fixed on the church. "This has to mean something," he said, battling through the swarm. They pressed on, the locusts seemingly thicker with every step. "We're getting closer," Santos urged, feeling the weight of the insects. They reached the church door, finding it tightly locked and difficult to enter. Of course it's locked, Santos muttered, frustration evident. They tugged and pushed, but the door wouldn't budge. What now? A team member asked, glancing nervously at the swarming locusts. We need another way in, Santos said, scanning the building. The situation was becoming more urgent by the minute. They had to get inside, no matter what. Attempts to contact the owner failed, and they couldn't afford to wait. He's not picking up, one team member reported, holding up a phone. We can't wait around, Santos decided. The locusts were growing more aggressive, and time was slipping away. We need to find another way in, he said, urgency in his voice. They circled the church, looking for any possible entry. The clock was ticking. Desperate, the team knew they had to take immediate action to investigate the church. We don't have a choice, Santos said, eyeing a small, weaker back entrance. This might be our only way in, a team member agreed. The lock looked old and brittle. Let's do it, Santos said firmly. They prepared to force their way inside, knowing the risks. The mystery of the locusts was too important to wait any longer. Exhausted from fighting through the locusts, the team found a small, weaker back entrance to the church. This might work, Santos said, pointing to the old door. They were weary, the constant swarm taking its toll. Let's get this open, a team member urged. The door looked fragile compared to the main entrance. It's our best shot, Santos agreed, preparing to force the lock. They had to get inside, no matter what. Breaking the lock felt wrong, but Santos knew they had no other option. We need to get in, he said firmly, taking a tool to the lock. The metal creaked and groaned under the pressure. Hurry, a team member urged, glancing nervously at the thickening swarm. With a final push, the lock gave way. We're in, Santos announced, relief mingled with urgency. They wasted no time entering the church. They quickly entered the church, some locusts following them inside. Get the door closed, Santos instructed, shutting out most of the swarm. A few locusts flitted around the dim interior, but the worst of the swarm was left outside. We made it, a team member said, catching their breath. Now let's find out what's going on here, Santos said, scanning the eerily silent church. They were in, but the mystery deepened. Despite the swarm outside, the church's interior was eerily free of locusts. This is strange, a team member whispered. Santos looked around, puzzled. Why aren't they coming in? He wondered aloud. The air inside was still, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. It's like they're avoiding this place, another team member noted. The silence was unsettling, adding to the sense of mystery surrounding the church. Confused, the team realized this supposed epicenter had not been penetrated by the swarm. This was supposed to be the source, Santos said, frustration creeping into his voice. They looked around, trying to understand. There's something we're missing, he continued. The locusts were everywhere outside, but inside, the church was untouched. We need to search this place thoroughly, Santos decided. The answers had to be somewhere within these walls. The team noticed the church seemed designed to keep locusts out, raising suspicion of a planned situation. Look at these seals, Santos pointed out, examining the windows. They're airtight, a team member observed. The doors and windows had reinforced edges, clearly built to keep something out. This isn't a coincidence, Santos muttered. The meticulous construction heightened their suspicions. Someone knew this was coming, he said, determined to uncover the truth. They explored the empty, well-maintained church, finding no immediate answers. Everything's in perfect condition, a team member noted, running a hand along a polished pew. Santos checked every corner, but there were no signs of recent activity. Who built this and why? He wondered aloud. The silence was unsettling. There has to be something here, he insisted, urging the team to keep looking. The pristine interior only deepened the mystery. Santos called out for anyone present, but received no response. Hello? Is anyone here? His voice echoed through the empty halls. The team listened intently, but the church remained silent. It's deserted, a team member whispered, Santos frowned, feeling uneasy. "We need to check every inch," he said, his voice resolute. The lack of response added to the eeriness of the place. They pressed on, determined to find answers. Determined, the team searched the ground floor, finding a stairway to the upper level. "There, by the altar," Santos pointed. The staircase was partially hidden behind a large tapestry. "Let's see where this leads," he said. The team gathered, ready to ascend. "Stay close," Santos instructed. They began to climb, the wooden steps creaking underfoot. The sense of anticipation grew as they neared the upper level. As they climbed the stairs, a loud buzzing noise grew increasingly louder, indicating they were close to something significant. "Do you hear that?" a team member asked, pausing. "It's getting louder," Santos confirmed, urging them forward. The buzzing became almost deafening as they approached the top. "We must be near the source," he said, pushing on. The noise spurred them forward, the promise of answers just ahead. Reaching a locked door upstairs, the team heard the intense buzzing behind it. "This is it," Santos said, pressing his ear against the door. The noise was almost unbearable. "We need to get in there," a team member urged. Santos nodded, assessing the sturdy door. "We're too close to stop now," he declared. The buzzing hinted at something significant on the other side, pushing them to act. Too far to turn back, they broke down the door, revealing a strange machine inside. "What is that?" someone exclaimed. Santos stepped forward, eyes widening. The machine was unlike anything they'd seen before. "It's making the noise," he said, pointing to the buzzing device. The team exchanged uneasy glances. "We need to shut it off," Santos said, his voice resolute. They had to act fast. The machine emitted the loud buzzing, attracting locusts with an effectiveness Santos hadn't anticipated. "It's drawing them in," he said, watching the insects swarm outside the window. "This is the source," a team member confirmed. The locusts were almost hypnotized by the sound. "We need to figure out how it works," Santos said, inspecting the machine. The buzzing filled the room, the cause of their troubles finally revealed. Recognizing the technology from his research, Santos realized its purpose in drawing the locusts. "I've seen this before," he said, pointing to the intricate mechanisms. "It's designed to mimic their natural calls," he explained. The team listened intently. "So, it's a trap," one member said. Santos nodded. "Exactly. We need to shut it down." The realization added urgency to their actions. They had to end this plague. The team quickly disabled the machine, stopping the buzzing and hoping to end the locust invasion. "Cut the power," Santos instructed. Sparks flew as they dismantled the device. The buzzing slowed, then ceased entirely. "It's off," a team member confirmed. They waited, watching the locust's reaction. "They're leaving," someone observed. Relief washed over them. "We did it," Santos said, though the mystery wasn't fully solved. The first step was complete. With the machine off, the locusts began dispersing and leaving the city. "Look, they're going!" a team member exclaimed. Santos watched as the swarm thinned, the insects flying away from the church. "It's working," he said with relief. The streets slowly cleared, residents peeking out to see the change. "We might be through the worst of it," another team member added. The team felt a collective sigh of relief as the locusts left. Authorities soon arrested the church's builder, who admitted to using the machine to summon a locust plague. "We've got him," a police officer informed Santos. The builder, a disheveled man, was led away in handcuffs. "Why did you do it?" Santos asked. The man smirked, not offering much. "It's over now," the officer said. The team felt a mix of anger and relief. The culprit was caught, and justice would be served. He had intended to punish the non-believers, hoping they'd see it as divine retribution. "They needed a sign," the builder said during questioning. "I wanted them to repent." His motives shocked the community. "He did all this to prove a point?" Santos wondered aloud. The team couldn't fathom the extent of his actions. At least it's over, a team member said. The revelation brought some closure, but the damage was done. The man faced trial for his actions, likely to spend many years in prison. He'll answer for what he did, an officer told the gathered crowd. The trial drew significant attention, the community eager for justice. He endangered all of us, one resident said. The proceedings were swift, the evidence overwhelming. He won't harm anyone else, Santos said, watching the verdict. The city began to heal, slowly returning to normalcy. The church was repurposed into a recreation centre, bringing the community back together. This place needs new memories, Santos said at the opening ceremony. Children played where the machine once buzzed, laughter replacing fear. It's a fresh start, a local resident said, smiling. The community gathered, united in reclaiming the space. We've been through a lot, Santos said, but we came out stronger. The church, now a symbol of hope, marked a new beginning.